The story begins with a young woman named Jaren, who is going for an interview at a big company that can change her life. As she rushes up the office stairs to the interview room, her heel slips off her foot and falls down. When she goes to retrieve it, she runs into a handsome guy holding the shoe. For a moment, Jaren feels like this is her Cinderella moment, and the guy in front of her is her Prince Charming. However, her hopes are washed away as the man threatens to sue her for attempted murder because the heel hit his head and he could have died. Jaren realizes that her Prince Charming turned out to be a mentally unstable dude, and she decides to not waste any of her precious time with a nutjob like him. However, the reason for this was not that she needed to hurry to the interview. Instead, Jaren's real goal was to marry a rich guy who could change her life. Just a few months ago, Jaren had lost her father, and he left her some inheritance. Jaren thought that it would be money to help the family, but to her shock, her dad was totally broke. The only thing he left her was a recruitment notice for Cheongdam Heaven Company, with a note saying she could change her life there. On top of that, her father left her huge debt and an unborn child behind that Jaren had to look after because, as it turns out, Jaren's stepmother was pregnant. Years ago, when Jaren and her father moved in with her stepmother, she already had 2 daughters, and after her father's death, things became troublesome. They couldn't repay their debts, so the court auctioned off their home to settle the debts. Now, they had to live in a tiny house, and Jaren had to share a room with her stepsister. Her stepmother kept working as a dance instructor to support the family, despite the risk of miscarriage. One day, her body finally collapsed after all the stress, and she was taken to the hospital. While Jaren looked after her, she realized that the days ahead were going to be really difficult. She began picturing their life like it was a scene straight out of an old drama. Her stepmother was unwell and unable to work, and her newborn baby was in Jaren's arms. Meanwhile, her sister Hua Jin was secretly eating the baby food. Jaren knew that such a future was not that far away, and before things got that bad, she decided to follow her father's advice. She remembered Cheongdam Heaven and decided that she would change her life there, not by working, but by marrying a rich man. Everyone knew that the most eligible bachelor in Cheongdam Heaven was the company's director, Shaman, but he was far from perfect. He was handsome, talented, and smart, but mentally, he seemed to have a few screws loose. He made quirky decisions that were not always the best for his company, like the time when his secretary reported that the company suffered a 200% loss last month, and instead of taking any cost-cutting measures, he ordered a 10% salary increase for any struggling employee. And as fate would have it, when Jaren arrived for the interview, she accidentally dropped her sandal on the head of the same crazy director. Shamin is now convinced that Jaren was trying to kill him, and he has another reason to doubt her. Turns out, Shamin was also admitted to the same hospital as Jaren's stepmom, and he has seen her around already. Jaren apologizes to him, but Shamin refuses to accept her apology, insisting she hit him on purpose. Jaren explains it was an accident, but Shamin believes that Jaren is really after his life, but his fate has always protected him till now. Realizing he does not understand normally, Jaren uses another method to convince him. She pushes him and suddenly hugs him to keep him safe, and Shamin freezes in shock. However, Jaren's actions come to bite her back in the interview, where Shamin uses his power to reject her. Mocking her, he asks whether she is happy now, but Jaren is not someone who gives up easily. She angrily wishes that lightning would strike him, and that very night, lightning really flashes across the sky. When Shaman sees how much Jaren talks about him, he runs into his house in fear. Later, when he remembers the afternoon incident, he unknowingly smiles. The truth is that Shaman has always been cold and indifferent to love, but after meeting Jaren, something begins to change inside him. She no longer looks like a stone-faced stranger to him, as she seems charming and beautiful. He tries to distract himself with workouts, but no matter what he does, he keeps thinking about her. Even in his sleep, he sees her face and feels as if he is going crazy. So he decides to find out who she really is, and his plan is to hire her at his company. When he calls Jaren, she assumes that he wants to cause trouble again. However, he explains that he wants her to work there, but Jaren hesitates at first to accept his offer. To her, he seems mentally unstable, but since Jaren needed money, she finally accepts the job offer. The next day, when Jaren arrives at the office, She casually mentions that it is her first day, but for Shaman, it is also a special day because he is getting to know her better. He blushes and recalls how he secretly prepared for her arrival. He tried on gold chains to look rich as well as tight pants, and finally chooses a suit, but then he started panicking. He started worrying that he might look too handsome, which could make Jaren fall in love with him quickly. Since he was not sure that he wanted that, so he chose something he thought she will dislike, which is his gold belt. But to his surprise, as soon as Jaren sees it, she bursts out laughing and remarks that no woman would come near him with that goofy belt. Shamin becomes so irritated by her comment that he removes it immediately. Later, the new employee introduction ceremony begins, and Shamin leads it himself. Jaren suspects that there might be a hidden camera, and this is a prank, but a co-worker explains that it is only a welcome ceremony where everyone shares their dream. One person wants to become rich, another wants a young husband, and Jaren says that she wants to become Cinderella. Hearing this, Shamin assumes that Jaren has joined the company not to work, but to get married. She explains that she means she wants to work hard and someday find a trustworthy person to marry. But still, Shamin only sees problems in her and wants to fire her. Jaren honestly begs for the job and promises to work hard, so Shamin then proposes a bet, saying that if she wins, she can stay at the company. Although he has allowed her to choose the challenge, he starts by suggesting opening a Coke bottle, which Jaren could not open, and Shamin starts mocking her. She then chooses arm wrestling, but she is far weaker than him. Even though Jaren uses all of her strength, she cannot move his wrist. Jaren even tries to win by using both her hands, but the result is still the same. Jaren suddenly notices his slightly flattened fingers and starts worrying that she might have injured him, which is so delulu that it makes Shaman smile. He explains that it was from an old childhood injury, and for the first time, he senses her sincerity and begins to soften toward her. To avoid overthinking, Shaman suggests having cold drinks together, and when Jaren was quietly drinking from the bottle, suddenly a strong wind started blowing like a dramatic movie scene. After she finishes, it is Shaman's turn, so he takes one sip, spits it out, and loses the bet, which means Jaren gets to stay at the company. After drinking so much Coke, Jaren urgently needs to use the bathroom. Shamin notices her discomfort, and when she mentions that both restrooms are far away, he hands her his umbrella to cover herself. She praises him like a good citizen and asks him to leave, but instead, seeing her panic, he lifts her in his arms and carries her to the nearest restroom. When Jaren comes out, she finds him still waiting. Remembering that moment later, she feels the warmth of his character and begins to think that he might truly be a good person. Her happy thoughts shatter when a woman arrives there, claiming to be Shaman's fiancé. Jaren freezes, remembering that Shaman previously said he does not believe in marriage. Seeing his fiancé in front of her makes Jaren question whether he has been lying. Little to her notice, this engagement was only a business strategy in reality, where Shaman and his fiancée Daun shared no feelings and were only business partners. To add to that fact, Daun was worried that rumors about Shaman and Jaren would harm her company, so she came to warn Shaman to stay away from Jaren. At home, Jaren remembers how Shaman carried her, and a small smile appears on her face as she starts thinking about his strong body. At the same time, Shaman cannot stop thinking about her either. He exercises to distract himself, but her face keeps appearing in his mind. Remembering how she playfully called him in a hurry, he smiles and realizes that he may truly be falling for her. The next day, they run into each other on the street. Jaren tries to avoid him out of embarrassment, but Shamin teases her by calling her a bedwetter and asks her to apologize for the previous day. She explains that she wanted to apologize for that which she forgot after his fiancé appeared. She then asks Shaman why he hid his engagement from her, and Shaman, assuming that she likes him, proudly announces that he cannot love anyone. Jaren snaps back and calls him a liar while pointing out the contradiction between claiming not to believe in marriage while secretly being engaged. When she calls him crazy, she immediately remembers that he is her boss and apologizes to protect her job, though she firmly adds that she does not spend time with crazy people. Later at the office, Shamin calls Jaren for private training, and when she arrives, Daun sees Shamin making Jaren wash all the curtains. Jaren knows that he is taking revenge but remains silent, and Daun mocks her, suggesting that if she wants a rich husband, she should pray at a temple instead of working. To mock her even further, she narrates a story of a manager who donated a large sum at a temple and soon found a rich spouse. After finishing the curtains, Jaren starts playing music to lift her mood, and it works. While dancing, she mentions that she is going to the temple to pray. Watching her smile, Shamin becomes completely mesmerized, and out of curiosity, he snatches her earphones, but embarrassing sounds play from her phone. Jaren grabs them back, but in the process, she loses her balance, and both of them fall into a romantic position. The fall brings them closer, and when they stand up, Shamin compliments how clean the curtains are. Jaren takes the opportunity to suggest becoming a permanent employee, but Shamin refuses, claiming that she is dangerous. She counters by implying that she is beneficial instead, but to escape her pleas, he places a basket on her head and tells her to be quiet. After work, when Jaren is exhausted and heading home, Shamin appears again and praises her work before assigning her another cleaning task for the next day. Jaren becomes furious and considers quitting, but then she receives a message from her uncle thanking her for paying his debt. Jaren sighs, realizing that her entire salary goes towards settling the debts. Remembering Da-eun's story about temple donations, she actually goes to the temple and prays for a rich husband. The next day, Shamin unexpectedly approves her as a full-time employee. Jaren is thrilled and asks for the reason, but Shamin remarks that becoming full-time does not guarantee finding a rich husband. Feeling insulted, Jaren steps toward him angrily, but as she gets close, Shamin loses himself in her presence again. To control his emotions, he tells her to stay away and comments that her hair smells strange. Taking it seriously, Jaren sprays herself with toilet deodorizer and even asks a co-worker whether she smells bad, who jokes that she may have forgotten to shower. She then remembers the advice to write down her wish and frequently look at it often. But as she sincerely writes it down on a piece of paper, a strong gust of wind carries the paper to a tall and extremely handsome man. Jaren runs to catch the paper and collides with the man, but as she looks up, time seems to stop, and she becomes captivated by him. Shamin witnesses this scene and immediately considers the man as his rival, while Jaren becomes convinced that this man, Do-hong, is her future husband. Do-hong has already read the first line of her wish, and she quickly snatches it back before he can read the more embarrassing part, accidentally popping off his button. Afraid of angering him, she apologizes, but Do-hong calmly reassures her and sews the button himself. Jaren becomes completely fascinated by this act. Soon after, a co-worker approaches Do-hong, but Jaren pulls the co-worker away to talk to Do-hong privately. At the same time, Shamin approaches Do-hong while clearly radiating his jealousy and silently warning him to stay away from Jaren. Later, Jaren introduces Shamin as the company director, which makes Do-hong realize his position. Shamin then asks another employee to entertain Do-hong, leaving Jaren feeling betrayed since she believes he had promised her full-time status. Do-hong requests that Jaren guide him instead, and Shamin reluctantly agrees. Do-hong introduces himself as an award-winning director and asks about membership requirements. Jaren regretfully explains that membership is full and requires a VIP invitation. When Do-hong prepares to leave disappointed, Jaren asks for an exception and seeks Shamin's permission to let Do-hong join the membership. Shamin initially refuses, calling Do-hong ordinary, but Jaren reveals his status, and Da-eun also insists it would benefit the company, so Shamin finally agrees. As Jaren escorts Do-hong out, Shamin secretly follows them while his heart is pounding with jealousy. However, as she comes close, he comments again on her smell and angrily pushes her toward Do-hong. Do-hong catches her gently, compliments her scent, and brushes her hair aside. Shamin immediately regrets his action, realizing how charming Do-hong is. Before leaving, Do-hong gives Jaren candy and mentions meeting her at the new member party, which makes her heart soar high in hopes. Shamin then plans to stop her from attending by assigning her an overwhelming weekend task involving new paintings. Although Jaren asks for a different assignment, he refuses, fearing that if she stays close, he will fall deeper in love with her. Later, Shamin warns Jaren not to dress up too much for the party, but when she arrives at the party, his eyes immediately fix on her as she looks absolutely stunning. Despite this, Jaren's focus is solely on Do-hong, so she quietly sits near him, while Shamin drinks water to hide his jealousy. Soon, Do-hong and Jaren move to another table, where they meet Gayang, the daughter of the Anson Electronics representative. Gayang asks who invited Do-hong, and he responds that Jaren invited him. Da-ine, standing nearby, adds that Shamin allowed Do-hong to become a member because of Jaren's introduction. Gayang continues to probe the relationship between Jaren and Do-hong. Do-hong explains that he has only met Jaren once, and that there is nothing between them. Jaren smiles awkwardly at this response, while Gayang assumes Jaren is chasing a rich husband. She becomes more aggressive, mockingly suggesting that Jaren work at her company if she needs money. Jaren refuses for the sake of her dignity, explaining that she wants to work where she can grow without humiliation. Gayang then orders Jaren to bring her water. Jaren instead brings a mint chocolate drink intended for guests. Gayang complains that it tastes unpleasant and instinctively pushes Jaren, causing her to fall while tightly gripping Gayang's hand. Both women fall to the floor. Do-hong rushes over and immediately offers Gayang a handkerchief. He helps her up and unexpectedly states that the accident is Jaren's fault. At that moment, Jaren understands everything. She realizes that she mistakenly believed Do-hong could be her future husband, and now sees that he approached her only to join the club. Do-hong behaves politely after that and helps Jaren up too, but just then, Shamin intervenes and slaps his hand away. Without hesitation, Jaren grabs Chamin's hand instead, and although Chamin as well as Da-ine were only strategic partners with no romantic involvement, everyone knows Da-ine is his fiancée, and his behavior damages her reputation. Da-in gets furious, so she lashes out and leaves the party in anger. After she goes, Shaman places his coat over Jaren's shoulders while he takes her hand and deliberately stands in front of Do-hong. Jaren signals that she is fine and that Shaman does not need to worry about her. Shaman then explains that his engagement is a convenience marriage and that there are no feelings involved. He follows Da-in to the lobby and questions her reaction, which makes Da-in admit that she cannot tolerate seeing him care so much for Jaren. Shamin responds by telling her not to return and insists that he will continue protecting Jaren. These words anger Da-ine, which forces her to leave, revealing that she herself harbors feelings for him. Later, Shamin encounters Do-hong in the bathroom, who warns him to stay away from someone like Jaren, claiming that such involvement would disrupt social order. He asks whether Shamin has feelings for Jaren, but instead of answering, Shamin pins Do-hong against the wall and warns him not to speculate about his thoughts, emphasizing that they come from different worlds. Meanwhile, Jaren apologizes to Gayang for spilling milk tea, but Gayang mocks her, stating that only poor people apologize and that powerful individuals never do. She further humiliates Jaren by insisting that no matter how hard she tries, she will never escape her poor status. When Do-hong returns to the table, Jaren recalls how he defended Gayang earlier and blamed her. Hurt and disillusioned, she leaves, concluding that her dream of marrying a rich man has been nothing more than a joke. As Jaren nears tears, Shamin approaches and asks whether she needs help. Remembering Gayang's position, Jaren leans toward Shamin, partly to regain her composure, and Shamin also seems intent on warning Do-hong to stay away from Jaren. In a sudden move, Shamin kisses Jaren, which shocks everyone present and further infuriates Do-hong. Jaren does not expect a real kiss, as she only intended a staged moment, and the reality angers her. Shamin explains that he merely took the initiative while claiming he was helping her. Unable to argue further, Jaren leaves, but despite her anger, she still smiles faintly on the way home, while Shaman remains dazed by what he has done. The next day at the company, they meet again, and to reduce the awkwardness, Jaren greets Shaman. Shaman immediately clarifies that he does not care about what happened the previous night and tells her to relax. Jaren is startled by how indifferent he sounds and treats his comment as something insignificant. Shaman misreads her indifferent, sea cucumber-like reaction as something precious, while in reality her words come from a mistranslation that creates comic confusion, though Jaren herself is able to move on freely. Do-hong then arrives and openly flirts with Jaren. During a mishap, she accidentally burns herself, so Do-hong immediately treats the injury and asks about her relationship with Chamin. When Jaren hears Chamin's name, she unconsciously releases Do-hong's hand and explains that Chamin is only her boss and she is merely his employee. Do-hong suggests that she should visit his office again and fixes her hairpin, implying that the hairpin counts as an invitation. Their co-workers observe that Shaman has recently been unusually interested in Jaren and assume that he likes her, while Jaren suspects that Shaman is deliberately orchestrating everything to push her out of the company. Her co-workers suggest that she should test whether Shaman truly has feelings for her. Wanting clarity, Jaren prepares a test of her own. When she enters Shaman's office, she notices an extra hairpin on his desk and openly mentions that Do-hong has asked her to come. Shamin realizes that the two of them may go to the office together and becomes unable to stay calm. He asks whether she has accepted Do-hong's advances, and she continues the test, saying that she has. Shamin's expression turns dissatisfied, so Jaren then steps closer and asks him to kiss her again, slowly moving her lips toward his. She notices that he does not refuse, and that his eyes close. Jaren decides to continue the experiment by attempting a real kiss, but at the last moment, Shamin regains his composure and pushes her away. He tells her that she needs to prepare carefully, and when Jaren asks whether he truly wants this, he confirms that he does. He even takes her to choose clothes. Shaman's behavior makes Jaren feel as though he genuinely wants her to go, and she considers leaving the store. When Shaman asks why she wants to leave, Jaren replies that she already feels beautiful and does not need anything more. Shaman explains that making a good impression is the reason Do-hong has liked her, and hearing this convinces Jaren that Shaman does not love her. Jaren tries on many outfits while Shaman criticizes every one of them, repeatedly saying that certain styles do not suit her. Despite this, he buys every outfit she tries on, and the taxi is nearly filled by the clothes. He leaves her a note saying that he wants her to wear the most beautiful style for him. It becomes clear that he deliberately gives her unsuitable clothes so that she doesn't attract Do-hong. The following day, Jaren is called to Do-hong's office. Do-hong takes out a script and explains that he wants to stage a scene, adding that when they are together, they should do whatever they like, which makes Jaren remember Shamin saying the same thing before. When Jaren mentions another man, Do-hong becomes irritated, so pulls her closer and warns her not to bring up Shamin in front of him again. Do-hong then confesses that he likes her. At the same time, Shamin learns from Kolex that Do-hong is not a good person and frequently visits dance clubs with attractive women. Worried about Jaren, Shamin rushes to Do-hong's office where Do-hong is about to kiss Jaren, while Jaren is only thinking about kissing Shamin. Just as the kiss is about to happen, Do-hong's stomach growls, interrupting the moment. Soon after, a man enters the room who is Do-hong's brother, and he is visited to demand money. Do-hong fears that his brother will embarrass him in front of Jaren and tries to make him leave, but the brother refuses. He places a red book in front of Jaren and claims that Do-hong earned money from it and is merely pretending to be a director. Do-hong fears that Jaren will call him a fraud, but instead of scolding him, she defends him in front of his brother. Jaren realizes that Do-hong truly earns money through his own abilities and that his weakness lies in letting his brother take advantage of him. Angered by his brother's behavior, Do-hong forces him out and apologizes to Jaren for deceiving her, asking her not to inform Cheongdam Heaven since the company only accepts outstanding individuals. He worries that his membership will be revoked if the truth comes out. Jaren agrees and even helps him learn to accept himself, dusting off his book and telling him that he is an outstanding person. Although Do-hong may have initially intended to use her, his expression now suggests that he genuinely likes her. Shamin waits downstairs and immediately calls Jaren to ask what happened at the office. He is clearly worried and wants details, but Jaren misunderstands his concern. Since it is obvious to her that Shamin pushed her toward Do-hong, she hangs up the call out of exhaustion. Shamin is left confused by the sudden disconnect. The next day, Da-ene comes to the company looking for Jaren. Da-ene explains the engagement between herself and Shamin and questions whether Jaren can marry another wealthy man instead. Jaren asks why Da-ene and Shamin cannot share the truth about the engagement to everyone, which makes Da-ene accuse Jaren of causing problems with multiple men. Da-ene claims that Shamin kissed her at the party only to make Do-hong jealous so that Jaren would end up marrying him, and then apologizes to her on Shaman's behalf. Feeling treated like a toy during the party, Jaren argues back and bluntly states that Shamin is a very good kisser, which angers Da-en even more. Shamin notices Jaren's unhappiness and asks what happened at Do-hong's studio. It becomes clear that he has actively been involved by sending her there and then questioning her afterward. Jaren concludes that his behavior is nothing more than a prank and tells him that he has only prioritized his own interests. Shamin apologizes for not considering her feelings, but Jaren makes it clear that she will not accept such false kindness and tells him not to interfere in her matters, especially since Da-ini is already upset. Since Jaren has not eaten, she asks her uncle to buy bread from a famous bakery before it closes. Her uncle realizes that Da-ine's anger stems from Jaren and decides to kidnap her to get rid of her. Meanwhile, Jaren's best friend Sung-jang is unable to reach her and fears something has happened, so she goes to the company to look for her. Sung-jang meets Shamin and explains that she cannot contact Jaren. Remembering that Jaren told him not to interfere in her personal life, Shamin pretends not to care. Fortunately, Da-ine's two uncles are careless and leave Jaren's phone untouched while going out for late-night snacks. Jaren later checks her phone and activates it through voice command, which allows her to contact Sung-jang. And when Shamin hears that Jaren has been kidnapped, he runs straight to her location. When the uncles return, they try to force Jaren to sign an agreement to leave Cheongdam Heaven. Because jobs are scarce, Jaren firmly refuses, so one uncle pulls out a hair clipper to threaten her with baldness. But Shamin arrives just in time, and on seeing him, Jaren smiles in relief. Shamin confronts the two uncles with his umbrella and defeats them easily. He hugs Jaren, and in that moment, both of them understand their feelings. Shamin wants to confess, but he lacks the courage and later scolds himself in the car. Jaren remembers how Shamin saved her and becomes certain that he likes her, yet she cannot understand why he refuses to say it. She assumes that she is not outstanding enough and that he does not want a public relationship. When she returns home, her older sister, Hua Jin, calls her selfish and blames her for everything, forcing their mother to intervene. Hua Jin believes their mother does not need Jaren's help and thinks Jaren does not see them as family. Jaren feels like a stranger and beggar in her own home. This triggers years of pent-up anger in her stepmother, and Hua Jin slaps Jaren and orders her to leave. With nowhere else to go, Jaren returns to her old house, which is cold and lacks even running water. The next day, Shamin organizes self-defense training, outwardly for everyone's protection, but secretly to help Jaren learn how to defend herself. Jaren arrives half an hour late, and when she explains the reason, Shamin realizes that she has moved. He begins teaching her martial arts, first instructing her to act like a mountain, and then promising to teach self-defense. He hugs her to demonstrate stability and feels their heartbeats, then forcefully pushes her to regain control. The push hurts Jaren's throat, so she retaliates by pushing him back and feels satisfied by the small revenge. Shamin then explains the structure of back muscles and asks her to feel them. While she is doing so, Do-hong appears again looking for Jaren and deliberately brings up the previous day's incident in front of Chaman. Do-hong remarks that he enjoyed his time with her at the studio and asks to speak with her privately. Since Chaman no longer wishes to continue training, Jaren agrees, and Chaman, consumed with anger, watches them leave. Do-hong formally confesses to Jaren, while Chaman believes that Do-hong cannot possibly understand the kind of woman she is, and that he would not have confessed if he knew her real situation. Meanwhile, Do-hong confidently accepts everything Jaren offers. Chaman imagines Do-hong and Jaren kissing and regrets his earlier decision. He makes an excuse, claiming that Jaren became too immersed during practice. Jaren responds that practice must feel real and deliberately mentions Do-hong's confession. Hearing this, Chamin objects and calls Do-hong unreliable and dishonest. Jaren notices that Chamin's words make sense and realizes that Chamin and Do-hong come from very different environments. She considers that Chamin might accept someone different, yet he still refuses to admit his feelings. Jaren tells Chamin that he should not go to see Do-hong again. Chamin wants her to openly express her feelings, but at the most crucial moment, he still cannot bring himself to speak. Suddenly, Jaren invites Chamin to stay overnight at her house, explaining that she wants to confirm whether he can endure a night in her harsh living environment. When Chamin arrives, he sees that there is almost nothing in the house except for a very noticeable bed. Jaren explains that she has grown up in conditions like this. Chamin initially thinks that her poor living situation is her own fault and asks her why she moved out. Jaren answers that she believes she is a bad child, greedy, and useless, and that staying at home would only become a burden to her family. Shaman listens and helps her confront this pain, guiding her to see herself more clearly. When Jaren realizes that she can also be a loved child and understands that what she truly wanted was simply to hear someone say she was cute, she breaks down and cries, even though she has always pretended that she does not need such words. At that moment, Jaren realizes that Shaman's inability to admit his feelings is the reason his confession keeps being delayed. To prove that he can stay the night, Shaman firmly refuses to leave. As they sit close to each other, a phone call suddenly rings, forcing Shaman to take Jaren to his own house. Jaren says that she wants to take a warm bath first, but she then realizes that she does not know how to turn off the faucet and has to ask Shaman for help. When she finally turns off the water, Shaman finds himself once again drawn to her face. Afraid that he will lose control of himself, he tries to leave. However, as he stands up, an unexpected accident causes Jaren to fall, and an accidental kiss happens between them. To avoid making the situation more awkward, Jaren dodges away, and both of them try to act as if nothing has happened, but Shamin is unable to stop himself and kisses her again. Jaren closes her eyes and allows herself to enjoy the unexpected kiss. Soon after, Huajin calls Jaren and invites her home for a beef dinner. Shamin suspects that Do Hong may have called to interfere and wants Jaren to stay, but circumstances pull her away from the bathroom. Jaren explains that she is going to a dinner and pauses at the door, secretly hoping that Shamin will come after her and stop her, but Shaman assumes that the dinner will not be very good and does nothing. Eventually, Jaren returns home and finds that both of her sisters are heavily drunk. Her mother pulls her aside and asks whether Jaren truly meant what she had said earlier about the house not being a family. Jaren feels that they can never truly become real family members and admits that she has intentionally acted like an outsider. She apologizes for her mistakes, but her mother believes that Jaren is still family and helps reconcile the sisters. But Huajin insists that the matter has nothing to do with her because she is focused on her relationship with the doctor. In the end, the family makes peace, and the second sister resumes teasing Jaren as she did before. On the other hand, Shamin remembers his traumatic childhood. He once went to a hospital room and overheard his grandmother claiming that his mother had an affair and planned to leave with her lover. When Shaman tried to stop her car, he suffered an accident that badly injured his fingernails. Although the physical wounds heal, the emotional pain left a deep scar in his heart. From that moment on, Shamin began using an umbrella to hide his inner feelings. This became the reason he always carries one, and the reason he has never confessed his love, since he is afraid of being hurt by another woman again. On that same day, Do Hong brings a mysterious guest to Cheongdam Heaven. During the company introduction, Jaren recognizes the woman as a powerful movie tycoon. The company has already decorated a Christmas tree, and Jaren smiles brightly while looking at it. Shamin watches her with an expression that suggests he wants to get closer to her, does not dare to do so. At the same time, Da Ene, Do Hong, and Gaiyang show extremely unpleasant expressions and clearly intend to harm Jaren. Gaiyang deliberately spills water on Jaren in front of everyone and immediately orders her to clean it. Instead of reacting angrily, Jaren quietly takes a mop and begins cleaning. When she can no longer tolerate the humiliation, she picks up a stick and threatens Gaiyang. Gaiyang panics and runs to Do Hong's side, but Do Hong does not help her and instead pushes her hand away. He openly states that Jaren has merely defended herself and that there is nothing wrong with her actions. He even points out that Gaiyang is the one at fault. Do Hong then publicly explains that Jaren did not seduce him and openly admits that he has always liked her. This confession shocks everyone present there, including Shamin. Later, Shamin and Do Hong meet again in the bathroom. Do Hong advises Shamin to quickly marry his fiancée and take the initiative to withdraw, saying that he will take responsibility for Jaren instead. These words enrage Shamin, and he immediately steps forward and punches Do Hong. The two of them begin fighting, moving from the bathroom into the lobby. Jaren and the mysterious woman rush forward to stop them. The mysterious woman does not strike Shamin. Instead, she places her hand on Do Hong's head in a gesture that appears to protect Shamin. Do Hong then asks Jaren to come to the office, while the mysterious woman signals Jaren to get into her car and reveals that she is actually Shamin's biological mother. Shamin's mother explains her past in detail. She says that she had a difficult relationship with her mother-in-law and was driven out of the house while Shamin's father was away on a business trip. She explains that she was falsely accused of having an affair and that as she was leaving, she saw Shamin fall. She had begged the driver to stop the car, but he refused. Since then, she has hated herself for failing to protect her son. Now that she has become successful, she wants to bring Shamin home, but she fears that it may already be too late. Jaron suggests that Shamin should find his mother and talk to her, but Shamin still lacks the courage to face her. Over time, Jaron begins to understand Shamin's personality and realizes that his lack of love during childhood has caused him to hide his emotions. The next day, Jaron takes the initiative and invites Shamin to eat together, and Shamin happily agrees. At the restaurant, Shamin states that he does not want his mother there and asks her to leave immediately. His mother insists that there was never an affair and apologizes for hurting him, but Shamin refuses to believe her. He thinks that she is lying and acting selfishly in order to seek compensation. Even though she apologizes sincerely, Shamin still cannot trust her and walks out of the restaurant. Jaron follows and comforts him, advising him to sympathize with his mother rather than doubting her love. She hugs him and encourages him to feel the love that exists in his heart, even if it cannot be expressed in words. Her advice gradually helps Shamin understand his mother's suffering and calm his emotions. Shamin throws away his umbrella, symbolizing that he is finally letting go of the pain from his past. Later, he drinks together with Jaron. He remains unsure whether he should forgive his mother because he believes his father was wronged, but Jaron argues that his mother has suffered even more, especially because she has been looked down upon by her own son, and Shamin agrees with her perspective. After everything they have seen and experienced together, Shamin becomes curious about whether Jaron's dream of becoming Cinderella has changed. Unexpectedly, she says that it has not. She explains that she once dreamed of becoming a great artist, but had to abandon that dream because of her family circumstances. Shamin encourages her to persevere, but Jaron says that now she only wants to be Cinderella, meaning she wants true love and wishes to stay with the person she loves. Shamin tells Jaron that she is excellent and beautiful. Jaron assumes that he is saying this only because he has been drinking and accepts the compliment lightly. Shamin then asks what she had meant the last time she tried to explain herself. Jaron remembers his spoiled expression from that moment and feels shy. Eventually, the two of them begin going on sweet dates. When Shamin walks Jaron home, he watches her enter the house and later remembers how she hugged him and danced happily. The next day, they meet again, but a mischievous child suddenly starts shooting water with a toy gun. Shamin immediately opens his umbrella to block the water, but Jaron tells him that he does not need to keep it anymore. She explains that living defensively like that is exhausting, and encouraged by her words, Shamin gives her the umbrella to keep. That night, Shamin goes to see Jaron with gifts and flowers, but on the way, he encounters Da-en. Shamin admits that he likes Jaron. When Da-en threatens to ruin Jaron's life, Shamin stops her and asks what he must do in order to be forgiven. The next day, Jaron hears rumors that Shamin and Da-en are getting married, and she cannot believe that the man who had been so close to her is about to marry someone else. At that moment, Do-hong pulls Jaron aside, tells her not to let Shamin give flowers to another woman, and offers her a plane ticket to Berlin for a 1-month business trip. Jaron hesitates, feeling that she may not be worthy of Shamin. Meanwhile, Shamin watches his fiancée try on wedding dresses and feels no happiness at all. Jaron continues to suffer from emotional neglect and struggles with the idea of loving a cold man. When she goes to work the next day, she finds the company doors closed and learns that everyone is enjoying a day off. Encouraged by her sister's fiancé's advice, Jaron gathers her courage and decides to confess. However, when she meets Shamin, his cold expression and tone crush her resolve. When she mentions Do-hong's proposal to go to Berlin, Shamin shows no objection and claims that he has only been playing with her. Jaron collapses on the doorstep, overwhelmed by pain. The following day, Jaron receives a package containing a childhood drawing she once made of herself riding a white horse. Shamin has rescued it from the trash at her old house and left a note promising that he will always remain by her side. Remembering how her mother abandoned her as a child and how she cried silently after her father's death, Jaren realizes that she has always believed that the prince who would stay with her forever could only be herself. She refuses Do Hong's plane ticket and rejects his kindness. With even more debt pressing down on her, she picks up a pen and brush and begins pursuing her dream again. Even then, Shaman's image continues to hover around her. She imagines him everywhere and even sees him in a beggar at a subway station and feels his presence close by. At first, she does not want to interfere in his life, but after recalling their beautiful memories, she unconsciously returns to Cheongdam heaven. When she sees a sneaky figure and strikes him with a stick, she realizes it is Shaman. Turning on the light, Jaren finally faces her feelings and tells Shaman directly that she likes him, even though she has nothing. Shaman, having gained strength and confidence through her, finally expresses his love. In his eyes, everyone else is only a facade, and only Jaren makes his heart flutter. They reunite at last. Shamin then goes to see his father and explains that even if he has nothing now, he still has someone who loves him and is ready to begin his career. He visits only to say goodbye, but before he leaves, his father begins speaking about the family business and how Shaman cannot afford to leave it right now.